I'll bet you could travel all over the country and not find an individual who wouldn't fight to protect his freedom. And that's the way it should be, of course. But every once in a while, it's a good idea to redefine the word freedom and ask ourselves, what does freedom mean to me as an individual? Dr. Mortimer J. Adler, director of the Institute for Philosophical Research, has written a booklet titled The Challenge of the 20th Century. I think it's terrific, and I'd like to share some of his ideas with you. Maybe you'll find them as interesting as I did. Dr. Adler points out that just 100 years ago, leisure and learning were the privilege of the few. For the great mass of men and women, the years of schooling were short and the days of labor long. Those who worked all or most of their lives for a living had little free time to continue with learning after a brief schooling in childhood had prepared them for the time-consuming occupations of their adult life. I believe we should remind ourselves from time to time how really fortunate we are today, because within the memory of some men and women living today, there were times when a man got up while it was still dark, ate a meager breakfast, and trudged off to work. He didn't get home until after dark at night, so tired he could only eat again and drop off to sleep. And then the whole thing started all over again the next morning. This went on 6 days a week, and it frequently started when a boy was in his teens. For this back-breaking, mind-dulling work, he was paid barely enough to keep food on the table, and then only the basic foods. For the women, it was the same. Wood-burning stoves, no electricity, primitive medicine, and even that difficult or impossible to obtain. She bore the children, flirted with deadly infections, and worked herself into an early grave. With the dawn of industrial democracy at the turn of this century, extraordinary changes began to take place which affected the lives of all of us. The increasing productivity of industrial machinery gradually emancipated most men from a lifetime of grinding toil. The years of schooling for children were lengthened. The hours of the working day and the span of the working life were shortened. As more and more men were given the political and economic conditions of freedom, it became possible for more and more human beings to lead the lives of free men. Now, the Declaration of Independence declared all men free and equal by natural right. But it took more than 150 years of political, economic, and social progress to achieve even a working approximation of the ideal the Founding Fathers of the Republic had envisaged as a reality for their posterity, if not for their own generations. But today, men who have all the opportunities of freedom can, nevertheless, live like slaves. For at the beginning of a human life, the fight begins against the most tyrannical of masters. The master's name is ignorance. And to the extent that we permit this despot to exercise control over us, we are slaves. A free life with lots of leisure time on our hands gives us the opportunity to get rid of this master. The things we should most actively seek are knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, for they will endure through a lifetime, and they will give us control over our lives and our environment. Learning should not end when we leave school. It is then that it should really begin. Knowledge, then, is freedom. Learning is wealth to the poor, an honor to the rich, an aid to the young, and a support and comfort to the aged. An hour a day spent in the pursuit of knowledge can open to us great and undreamed of vistas. To my way of thinking, and I'm sure to yours too, children give the world its perennial hope, a big share of its laughter, and a great deal of its love. Children are the world's most beautiful flower garden, and every once in a while a youngster will indicate in his or her conversation that he or she wants to be great someday. Most kids at one time or another want to be great at something, but they seem stumped as a rule as to what it is. The next time you're talking with your youngsters, you might tell them of this definition of greatness. It appeared in the Indiana Freemason and was written by J. Carl Humphrey. It goes, "The potential for greatness lies within each of us. It is simply our best. A person who can peacefully lay his head upon his pillow of rest each night, thankful to God for the blessings of the day, secure in the knowledge that he has given his best to all he has done, is great." Now, to me, this is the best definition of greatness. It has nothing at all to do with a person's position or the amount of money he pays in taxes or the size of his house. Any man or woman is great who can end each day secure in the knowledge that he has given his best to all he has done. The child who does his best in school is just as great in his sphere as the statesman who successfully concludes a meeting of world leaders is in his. This reminds me of something I read a long time ago, written by William James of Harvard University. He said something to the effect that none of us needs to worry or be concerned about our future if we will just bend ourselves to our daily work with diligence, doing our very best. He went on to say that if we as individuals will follow this course of action, we will wake up one fine day to find that we are among the competent ones of our generation. It seems that human beings become discontented and frustrated to the extent that they try to avoid what they know they really should be doing. And in line with the youngsters, Josephine MacDonald wrote in Columbia, "If you will find the parents who bother to talk with their children, parents who realize that school is the least likely place for children to acquire an interest in life and learning, and that the dinner table, the hike, the fireplace, and deep armchairs are the best, you'll find the children with keenest minds and most eager eyes. You'll find children who have a heritage of the ability to live fully and happily, a heritage that will last their lives through and touch their children's children." It is in the home that children's lives are shaped, through the example and conversation of their parents. And it's here that parents have a problem. A man and a woman fall in love, marry, and suddenly, before they've even had time to learn how to get along with each other, they're parents. They're suddenly responsible for the growth and development of the world's most valuable commodity, a human child, with all its labyrinthine complexities and potential for greatness in the world. It is here that love and guidance, in that order, come into the picture. And to the extent that we as parents can develop these two abilities will determine to a very large degree the success, abilities, and happiness of our children. As Mr. Humphrey said, the potential for greatness is in each of us. It is simply our best. One of my favorite quotations about children was written by Charles Dickens, who wrote, "I love these little people, and it is not a slight thing when they, who are so fresh from God, love us." I believe that one of the most interesting, but certainly most confounding things about people is the way so many of them go through life with their hands held tightly over their eyes and an iron pot jammed down over their brains. According to the experts, the only thing that keeps more people from developing the way they should and from doing the many interesting things they could be doing is a thing called prejudice. I suppose everyone is prejudiced about something. The very word prejudice comes from the words pre and judge, and means to judge beforehand, to pass judgment on prematurely or in advance of due investigation. And the word prejudice is defined as an unfavorable opinion or feeling formed beforehand or without knowledge or thought or reason. For example, crazy as it may sound, I know a man who is immediately suspicious of short women and wouldn't trust one of them as far as he could throw her uphill into a strong wind. He must have had a bad experience with a woman about 5 feet tall, so now he doesn't trust her like any of them. Naturally, this hurts him in getting along with people. There are people who feel they don't have a chance in life because a particular place, such as Wall Street, or a minority group controls all of the money in the country. I'll bet you've heard that one. It must have been started by some pinhead who couldn't stand to admit his own failure, and instead of starting over again, he decided to blame someone else. Before you swallow a prejudice, give it the acid test. Investigate it. That's right, check it out, and you'll see it vanish like a puff of smoke in a hurricane. Don't go through life being held back by a lot of stupid prejudices that have no power or substance or truth to them. And whenever you find yourself about to repeat a prejudice you've heard but have not checked out, don't say it. If you repeat things you do not know to be true, and if they're of a prejudicial nature, you're throwing up barriers you're going to have a tough time climbing over. Have you ever noticed that whenever you say or think something bad about a person or a group, that it has a way of making a full circle and finally kicking you in the seat of the pants? It never fails. Yet we all know people who spend their entire lives kicking themselves in this fashion and having to dig up new prejudices as alibis for the fact that they never amount to a hill of beans. Fortunately for us, the youngsters of today are getting a much better education than we got. And if there's one thing that will put the staggers into prejudice, it's education. A prejudice disappears under the light of knowledge like a drop of water on a hot stove. It's true that a prejudice can cause quite a bit of mischief in the world, but the thing to remember is that the person a prejudice hurts most is the person who holds it. Prejudice can only walk with ignorance. If you get rid of one, you get rid of the other. Many years ago, when I was an actor on a radio network, the director happened to give me a very small part. In fact, it was just one line in a half-hour program. And I complained to him about it, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, "There are no small parts. There are only small actors." And certainly the same thing applies to the business of living. We determine what happens to us. If we're not doing too well, we may be holding ourselves back with a prejudice. The great jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes once wrote, "Men are tattooed with their special beliefs like so many South Sea Islanders, but a real human heart with divine love in it beats with the same glow under all the patterns of all Earth's 1,000 tribes."